Well, the Energy and Climate Change Minister, Chris Bowen, will attend a closed-door consultation meeting today over plans to roll out offshore wind turbines and transformation lines. Chris Bowen will meet leaders in the New South Wales Hunter region amid widespread community backlash over the plans. The offshore wind zone has triggered a fierce response from an alliance of fishermen, tourism operators, environmentalists and residents. The government is hopeful the meeting will head off a revolt in key Labor heartland seats. So let's bring in the National Senator Matt Canavan live from Launceston this morning. Matt, good to see you. So what do you make of this closed-door meeting with the leaders in the Hunter today over those wind turbines?
Well, Peter, I never thought I'd be coming on your show and desperately arguing to save the whales. I didn't think that universe, those planets would align, but here I am, because the Greens don't seem to be doing their job here. And I do think we need to think about the whales here. Over in the United States, they've had a doubling in the beachings of whales since the wind industry has started on their east coast. And so I think we've got to be a bit careful before we rush headlong into this. It seems like the minister's doing a fake consultation here. He's got this closed-door meeting. Why doesn't he have a town hall meeting, invite everybody along? I've been to plenty of those in my time, including as a minister. There's a lot of community concern about this, rightly so. And if you think it's no good to have an oil platform off the coast of Newcastle, like one or two platforms, how do you think it's okay to have hundreds of wind turbines? They've got the same amount of drilling that has to occur. There's issues potentially around the noise that they create long term. And it is a migratory path for the southern right whale, which is an endangered species. So we're not going to save the polar bear, Peter, by killing the southern right whale. We need to protect all our environment.
Well, I mean, not so much in New South Wales, but this is more a Tasmanian thing, that there's also the problem about the wedge-tailed eagles as well, with hundreds of them dying.
Well, it's a problem for renewable energy across the board. I mean, ultimately, wind and solar take up a huge amount of land. They take up a much bigger environmental footprint than, say, a nuclear energy plant, and that means it's worse for the environment. I mean, simple as that. The more land you take up, the more impact you're going to have. And obviously, with some of these new wind turbines, they are over 200 metres high, sometimes almost 300 metres to the tip of the blade. And they are going, and they do cause enormous damage to wildlife. And the enormous spread we need of these things across the country is almost unfathomable. A recent report from pro-net zero advocates said we need to blanket half the size of Victoria with wind and solar in our country. Why would we do so much environmental damage to our koalas, to our habitat, to our birds, and possibly to our whales as well, when we've got a proven solution like nuclear energy, which has a much smaller footprint? Just do that. OK,
I will ask you about nuclear in just a moment, but Patterson, Shortland, Gilmore, three seats there, are they going to be in play for the election if this continues?
Well, I think all of those seats are in play anyway, because they are all industrial heartland seats. It's part of our country that has helped build this nation in those areas, with the steelworks at Newcastle in the old days, but there's still a petrochemical plant there in Orica. There's obviously the coal industry that's basically bankrolling the federal government's budget right now. These are hard-working Australians that want to have a government that protects their jobs and livelihoods, and they don't really have that in the Labor Party anymore. Labor Party's long since stopped arguing and fighting for the working class. They want to shut down all those coal mines, take away those jobs, and give people jobs basically like IKEA furniture makers, where they just install solar panels onto frames. I mean, they don't take the sort of skills you have there in the Hunter to do that. Whereas if we build a nuclear power plant in the Hunter region, there's really high-skilled, high-paying jobs and a future for people's families there. So I think those seats are absolutely in play, because people want to protect their jobs, their livelihoods and their communities.
On the top of nuclear, the problem's cost, though, according to the government, almost $400 billion to switch to nuclear. That's been questioned by quite a few people, but what do you think the true cost is?
Well, these are dodgy figures, and I'll get to that. But I mean, Chris Bowen, he sounds like a religious maniac on this, doesn't he? I mean, he's just so one-sided here and not allowing any balance into the debate. And that should scare people when you've got the person in charge of an electricity system that's creaking, that looks like it might have blackouts this summer, and this guy is just obsessive In terms of the real cost, well, I mean, let's take Chris Bowen's costs. Where do those costs come from, Peter? They come from an International Energy Agency study that was done in 2015, 8 years ago, which said the cost of nuclear was $8,000 a kilowatt for large-scale reactors. They then said, oh, well, small-scale reactors are probably double the cost, that's $16,000, and then they escalated that to 2030 with an inflation factor to get your 18. That's where it comes from, they're 8-year-old figures, from that same report, you've got a figure of $8,000 a kilowatt hour, so that's more than half the price that Chris Bowen is quoting. And then he's using wind and solar figures which don't adjust for their lack of capacity. They don't work all the time, and they don't last as long. He's got wind and solar about $1,000 to $2,000 a kilowatt, and you need to times those by 9 because they work a third of the time and they last a third of the time. And so suddenly nuclear at $8,000 a kilowatt is much, much cheaper, and that's probably why countries with nuclear energy have much lower power prices than those with lots of wind and solar.
Okay, Matt Canavan live from Launceston this morning. Appreciate your time, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.